Amazing.
So, welcome back to another exclusive episode on the Passionate Pioneer podcast with today's guest, Nancy Griffin. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, 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 hi.
I'm thrilled to have you on the show. So, let me introduce you all to Nancy. So, Nancy is the founder of Women, Worth and Wellness. Nancy is a true connector and influencer, empowering women to prioritize their health and their wealth. Rooted in personal courage, determination, and a genuine sense of joy, Nancy has dedicated her career to helping women feel fabulous, generous, joyful, confident, and absolutely on top of their game in all aspects of their lives. From personal well-being and financial independence to their philanthropic endeavors and lasting legacy. It all sounds fabulous, Nancy, and I can't wait to dive in. So let me start with the first question, the most important one to start this conversation is you built your success around women's health and wealth. So what what was the pivotal moment for you that made you say, this is what I need to focus on? Or was it kind of a journey of discovery?
No, it was a journey of discovery, definitely. I was one of the first female managers for Procter& Gamble in Canada, and that was a big deal. But then you kind of arrive, and then, the glass ceiling kicks in. So I left, and I ran politically. I didn't win, and then I was basically doing everything in the community, which was fabulous. I mean, when you have leadership roles in the community, you really learn a lot. And through that process, I was then recruited into the whole wealth management business. And I was so sorry that I hadn't been there 20 years earlier because it was absolutely amazing. So, of course, you begin and you've got to find clients. So, you've got to go do what you do. And at the same time, you're learning what being a wealth advisor is all about. So, through that process, I ended up focusing primarily on women and not exclusively women, but a lot of my clients were women. And as I started to work with women, I realized that women have a disproportionate amount of responsibility pertaining to their family's health and well-being versus men we think of looking after the finances. And of course, women are very, very busy. So, how do they learn about all these different health related situations? So that's when I started to partner with health related organizations focusing on women's health. So I would do different events. I would charge a nominal amount like 25 or $50. So people start to get the feeling for a charitable donation as part of their whole wealth scenario, because it's often a tax deduction. But then they've been introduced to information and resources. So very simply, I started in the business in 1992. In 1994, I trademarked that brand, Women, Worth and Wellness, focusing exclusively on women's health and wealth. Because if you don't have your health, it doesn't matter how much money you've got. And so they were two cornerstones. And then net worth and self-worth, if you're in a position to give, then that enhances your own self-worth. And then here we are 31 years later. Over the last 5 years, I've spent a lot of time on women's philanthropy and legacy planning because women are really earning way more than they ever have before. But equally important, they're inheriting wealth, both from their parents as well as their partners, assuming their partner is a male who often, with their life expectancy, lives longer than a female. So that kind of is how it all came about. And over the years, did all sorts of different things. In Toronto, we have this amazing hospital called Women's College Hospital, and it focuses exclusively on women's health. So I partnered with them immediately, did their first golf tournament, and getting women out and having some fun while at the same time you're learning and connecting with key resources is something that I've done a lot of over the years. So one thing always leads to another, as you know.
Absolutely. Gosh, there's a lot to unpack there. I could start with the wealth, and money is just energy and money likes to be spent. So oftentimes we feel that, if something's free, there's no benefits in it. we like to pay for something and then we get that back. But also, I don't know, how do you feel about that?
Yeah,
Money as
exactly.
energy, right?
Right. Oh,
Um,
definitely. Definitely.
and there's also the fact that you touched on, women are more, in control of their money these days. I mean, years ago, well, first of all, we didn't earn anything. We were married,
Correct.
we had to get married. And in fact, the houses and inheritances were given only to sons or the
Right.
husbands of the women. So
Right.
they had to get married to even continue to have the money, or it just disappeared. They weren't allowed to have it, right? I mean, that's crazy to us these days, right? But that's
It
what
it
happened.
it it
But
is.
that's what happened. And then if you
Right.
did start earning money, you couldn't have a bank account. Your money had to go to your husband, and he had control of all the money. And I find that, I'm so glad we're not in those times
Oh
anymore.
my goodness. Imagine. Imagine.
I mean, it is crazy, right? I mean, to think how far we have come.
Correct.
And now we have, women in business, women in governments, women peacekeepers, money management, all types of industries where women have been brought to the table now.
Right.
And, it is true that, that we can do lots of different things. I wouldn't say we could do everything.
Not yet, not yet. But women's philanthropy, fast forwarding because women do have this wealth that they now can steward. But more often than not, women's philanthropy is quite different from men's. Women don't really want to go public because as a woman, if you arrive somewhere and you've got the best outfit in the room, really, you don't want people to make a fuss over you. Like you want to look terrific, but the last thing you want is somebody making a fuss. So it's kind of the same thing with philanthropy. It's like, who the heck do you think you are? Naming that hospital wing after you. I mean, women just don't do that.
Yeah.
Now, Melinda French Gates and Mackenzie Scott, they're really trailblazers. They're setting new role modeling for what women's philanthropy can be. And I don't know if you heard that Elon Musk had said to Mackenzie Scott, well, made a comment about her, saying she's just ruining so many organizations because she's giving all that money to women's organizations. She doubled what she was giving. It's like, I can do whatever I want. I've got
Right.
lots of money. This is where I want it to go, and I'm going to do even more of it. So mind your own business.
Yeah. Well, that's strange. No, I hadn't heard that about Elon Musk, and I'm still on the fence whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. I think he's doing some good things, but
Yeah,
I think with good intentions, some things are not done correctly, even with the best
exactly.
intention.
Exactly.
And so I'm on the fence with a lot of these people. And I
Right.
try just to stick to my lane, actually. I try not to be influenced by what,
Yes.
everybody else is doing. But it's difficult not to notice with someone like Elon Musk, who is a billionaire and does have a lot of what's the word? Oh,
Well,
um, clout,
correct.
for
In
for want
cap,
of a better word, right?
in
Clout.
caps.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
So it is. It is difficult not to take notice of them. But that's incredible that she's just like, okay, what are you telling me? That's a bad comment, not to do that? Okay, I'll double it then. I'll double down on that.
Correct.
Right.
Right. And especially because of what you just challenged me on. More important than, and it kind of goes back to what we just talked about earlier. I mean, in the past, women did not have control of money. More often than not, it was not their money that they had earned to begin with. And so certainly they didn't have any control over it. And for them to make those kinds of choices and decisions and push it out, it just did not happen. It didn't. And so often those women, their spouse would die, and they're left with this money to steward, and it's kind of like, I don't know, I don't know. And of course that's when women become very vulnerable because somebody can swoop in and give them really bad advice. So,
Yeah.
that's why over the years I really wanted women to be informed, to be aware, but also to have access to trusted resources that if something does come up that, oh, actually, I remember that we, learned about whatever, and I'm going to get in touch with that person. So that was sort of how Women Worth and Wellness was built up over the years.
Right. Yeah, I love that you're passionate about that. And and we discussed this before the podcast started, was that, one of my mottos is empowering women, empowered lives. And people ask me why I am focused on women, and it's for all of those reasons that we've already discussed.
Right.
Was that very similar for you then, Nancy?
Oh, oh, definitely. Definitely. You can see that, and you remember yourself, when you've got children to look after, you've got a job to look after, you've got a house to look after, and how in the world can you possibly keep up with everything? So when I started as a wealth advisor, I realized that one of the roles that I can play is bringing a lot of that information to their attention to help them, because a total wealth plan really starts with your health. It really does, because if you don't have your health, then really, where are you going anytime soon?
And when we're talking about health, we're talking about mental, emotional, and physical health, aren't we?
The
We're talking
works,
about
the
all of them,
works, the
all of
works,
them.
the works,
Because
the
we're
works.
often, as women, we'll just buckle down and get on with it. And we're always
Exactly.
putting ourselves
Right.
last on the
Exactly.
list.
Hmm.
And that's just something we've been doing for generations, for eons, we've been doing that.
Right. It's like, no, no, you go ahead. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Carry
Yeah.
on. Actually, an event that I picked up on just recently and have done a campaign around is menopause. I'm 75 years old, so people go, what the heck is she talking about menopause? But this other hospital in Toronto, Mount Sinai, came up. They've started a whole women's health focus. And they came out with this hot and bothered campaign, put it front and center, hot and bothered. And
Nice.
it's really, really smart, really smart. And I thought, you know what? I remember when I was going through menopause, that's women in their 40s. And women in their 40s are just getting to the point where they've ramped up their leadership roles to the point where they're just in the process of taking on big roles. And all of a sudden you're slashed back because of all of these symptoms that shut you down. And nobody's
Terrible.
talking about it. And
Nobody's
I
talking about it, in fact, and that's very interesting because I'm that category. I'm menopausal, and yes means no, no means yes, up means down, down means up. I don't know whether I'm coming or going. I've forgotten what went into a room for. I'm like, why am I
right.
here? I'm on the phone. I'm like, what did I do with my phone? It's like it's in your hand. You're talking to me. Yeah,
Well, there you go.
it's a brain fog. It's just like I was doing something. What was I doing? Or I've lost my train of thought. It's no sleeping. I've gone through the hot and cold. I've gone through
Yes.
the hot and bothered, hot, cold, hot, cold. Open the window, close the window, open the door,
Yep.
close. I've gone through all of that. Now I'm in the okay. I've got brain fog. I can't remember what I'm doing. I need a list. Every time I think of something, I've got to write it down because I can't remember. I think
Right.
I've got, I've got some type of mind disease. It's crazy.
It is. And I have a virtual assistant. She's in her 40s. And so we call ourselves the menopause mavens. And we bounce back and forth. And we've got t-shirts that say hot and bothered. But the whole purpose of the exercise is, girls, listen up. This happened to every single woman in the entire world. If you live that long, that you will experience this. And then the more you get into it, think of all the cultural differences. I mean, it's
Oh, yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah.
And so, as a result of all of this, I then was approached to do a presentation at a wealth advisors conference, most of whom will be men. And so I said to the organizer, how much time do I have? He said, 50 minutes, 50. It's like, so I'm starting off by saying, men, don't think for a minute this doesn't include you. That's why they call it men au pause. Like, who named it menopause? It wasn't me. But because often, as you know, people will say, well, now I understand what you're saying, but I'm suffering too. So one of my first slides is going to be menopause, andropause. You're right, men, this does happen to you, but to this extent, not to this extent that it happens for women. So again, the whole purpose of the exercise is for them to increase their awareness of what does happen because they're prospecting for new clients. So in prospecting for new clients, if somebody does forget, they don't remember, whatever, maybe, just maybe, they're not being a stupid person. This can be a health-related symptom. So my whole thrust is going to be increase their awareness and appreciation for what women are going through because it's women you know, women you work with, women you're prospecting. You know, you'll be a much better advisor if you've got a better idea of all of this and how significant it really is.
Yeah, well, I just love it that we're actually, we're actually talking about this now. Because
Right.
years ago they just didn't talk, they just got on with
No,
it. And
right.
my mother and my grandmother, how did they, you know, I mean, people must have thought they were nuts. Oh, she's gone a bit nuts. We just leave her alone. She's just having one of those turns, you know. And there was no understanding of it really.
Exactly. Exactly. I asked one woman, I said, no, and to that point, what about our mothers and grandmothers, our mothers in particular? She said, I just remember my mother going into the bathroom and closing the door and not coming out for 20 minutes. Well, who knows what she was doing? I just need some quiet time. Oh my goodness. I mean, really. So I'm going to have a lot of fun with this presentation. I really am. And, you know, your point is spot on. Now women are talking about it. It's like this is one more thing that we need to bring to the forefront
Yeah,
because we've just suppressed it.
yeah.
Suppressed it.
Well, yeah, we have suppressed it because we're not good at talking. Oh, well, men are not good about talking about their feelings, although they're getting better. But women, we do talk about our feelings, but not on a serious level. We talk with our girlfriends and friends
Right.
and and we just talk about it. We complain about it, maybe. We talk about it, but we're not having serious discussions. Whereas now we're having serious discussions about it, and we're really
Exactly.
bringing it into the public
Correct.
to talk about, which
Correct.
is completely different. And I think that's wonderful. Um, so we're talking about mums. So your mum was obviously a big inspiration about having her own money, talking about having your own money and your
Right.
good health. So
Yep.
how did her lessons shape your understanding and
Well, both my parents were terrific and really, really strong people in their own way. But of course, my dad had to be the boss of everything. And she would let him be the boss of everything, but then she'd find her own way to be the boss of herself. And she was a homemaker extraordinaire, of course, and she started her own homemade jam business. So 100% pure. She was always proud of the fact that there were no additives, and then just gradually built this very small business. She would place her product in a lot of key tourist locations, so she was getting a lot of really positive recognition. And of course, she had her own money. And my dad was an investor in the stock market. And if I missed the bus when I was a kid, teenager, he would drive me to high school. And so in those days, you didn't check your quotes online. You got the paper,
what do
and
you mean
with your
online? It was supposed to didn't even exist.
exactly. And so, we'd be in the car and he'd call out his holdings. Like, in other words, what did it close at yesterday? So when she ended up with her own money, she decided she'd open up her own stock account. And of course, she received this Financial Times newspaper in the mail. So you can imagine how current the information was by the time it arrived. But she always placed high value on investing in whatever she invested in, on who the CEO was and what more often than not, I can't remember a woman that she admired, um, what their approach was to doing business. She really placed high value on that. And it got to the point where my dad would sort of casually ask her, like, in other words, you've been doing the research. What are you thinking about? So he's basically asking her for some quotes. And at one point, she read about this, every home, you probably grew up with it as well, had a piano, and everybody had to take piano lessons. Anyway, she was a terrific pianist, but she read about this piano manufacturer, new business, really liked what this guy was doing coming into the market because he was taking on ones that were very established. And she just decided she was going to buy one of his pianos. So a brand new piano that was she was so proud of because she had purchased it with her own money. And of course, and part of my story is that, of course, I took piano lessons, as did my daughter, who was best pals with her grandmother. And my daughter now has her two daughters, so my two granddaughters taking piano lessons. And of course, she left her piano to daughter Julia, who will now have it for her two girls. And part of my reasoning in writing that story was for these granddaughters, her great granddaughters, to understand where this came from to the extent that they can have an appreciation for it. I mean, we all kind of go, oh, whatever. But that was the momentum. That was the reason. She was musical. She was an entrepreneur. She was respectful, but at the same time, she felt very strongly that she had a right to be as well, and she had a right to bring her uniqueness forward.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned music, and it's amazing that your your father was asking her advice, right?
Right.
Because she'd done the research.
Right.
Um, but the fact that she bought the piano with her own money was
Big
marvelous
deal.
back then, right?
Oh, big deal. Really big deal.
Absolutely marvelous. And my grandmother, in fact, was a pianist and had a piano, and we used to have sing-along. So that
Yes.
resonates with me. Um,
Yes.
and in fact, I was quite musically gifted, although I went a different route. I did take some piano lessons when I was young. My father bought me a piano, but it brings back fond memories talking about music. But
Exactly.
again, she used to have, and I didn't actually think about this until much later, that she used to have students at the house.
Oh,
So in fact, she was an entrepreneur, although
of
they
course.
wouldn't have called her that back then.
Of course
But
she was.
she was teaching music to students.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes, definitely.
and so she was making her own money. I'm not sure where that went, whether she gave it to my grandfather or what I don't know. But the fact was that she had some independence and
Correct.
flexibility, which was nice.
And that enhances your own confidence level in terms of I've got a right to be.
Right.
And they weren't, she was never blatant. She was never, dogmatic or rude. It
No.
was just, finding your own way to get some things for yourself based on your own unique ability.
But I also think that's about following the joy.
Yes,
And
precisely.
and when we hear about these stories, oh, she was just doing it, but she didn't really take any credit for it. My grandmother the same. She just did it. And she just did it. But she loved doing it, the joy in what she did. She
There
just
you
loved
go.
to play on the piano. She would always be playing on the piano. She'd
Perfect.
love to teach you, come and sit with me. I'll teach you the keys. I mean, she just loved it. It was her joy. And I think that that's really important.
But
Um,
okay, but just building on that, this is another quality that I've talked about a lot. People that I spend time with they have two main qualities. They're generous and they've got a sense of humor. And your grandmother was generous by sharing her offering to teach somebody else.
yeah.
It wasn't like I'm a really special person and you might sit there and listen to me and admire how wonderful I am. No, she's offering. I mean, that in itself says a lot about the person. It really does.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it just shows you that she was just you could see her when she was playing the piano.
Yeah,
I mean, I still have the sheets of music from her. The sheer joy. And I
correct.
think that that's what's missing for a lot of women is when
Mhm.
we're in the, um, let's just say years ago, having being suppressed, as you called it, and
Mhm.
then coming into our own and following a career and, raising a family and feeling successful. And then hitting that menopause stage. And then, you think everything's okay and then everything's sort of, okay, well, who am I? What am I? What am I doing? Where's my joy gone?
Right.
What's happening in my life? It's like that. Hmm. Midlife crisis, maybe.
Yes,
Hmm. But it's not the same as men's because men's just have that midlife crisis, but women have that with foggy brain and night
right.
sweats and all the rest of it that
Exactly. It's
comes
like,
with it, right? So the question I have for you is what small step do you think you could take to finding finding some joy?
well, I think the first order of business is to be thankful that you are alive because we know what in the world is going on is just god awful. So the fact that you're still vertical, the fact that you're still moving around, and the fact that you can, sustain yourself is itself a joyful moment. It really is. So then you've got to do some more soul searching. You got to spend some time talking to yourself and just say, okay, this is where I am, this is where I've come from. So what is important to me now? What would make me truly happy? And normally what happens is when people start to give or they start to share, that in itself is joyful because you are extending yourself, but then more often than not, that comes back to you. And so it becomes very much a cyclical situation. Really, if we're alive and we're um, able to find food, we've got a comfortable place to live. Really, 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 we're so very, very fortunate. So, we can't be so selfish and focus on, many more things that we want without just stopping and taking a moment right now to realize how far you've come and how much you have accomplished. And that in itself is a joyful moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think where you touched on selfish there, and I think that, we've been in service to self for so long, and I think
Right.
now we're coming into service to others, and I think women are leading the way in that regard,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes, yes. My new best,
Um,
I'm a Rotarian, and my new best friend is in Beirut, and she and I are having a blast going back and forth. We really are. But it's all about, what's been going on has been so challenging, but she's always got positive moments to share. And
right.
that for me is very inspiring. And then I share back something with her. So you're right. Don't be so selfish. Really think about what you can offer to extend yourself to helping someone else.
Yeah. And it could seriously be something that you think is silly that, you gave a sandwich to someone on the street,
Correct.
for example,
Right.
right? I mean,
Ex-
it really can be some random act of kindness.
Exactly.
Always brings us so much joy. And if you think about it, if you just take that back to, basic things, is that when you buy a gift for somebody, how joyful is that? How joyful do you feel when you bought a gift and you give it to somebody else without
Right.
any expectations, without anything? I don't want anything in return. You've just bought them a gift.
Right.
That act right there is joyful, right?
It is. The other thing that is really, really, really powerful is to send a note in the mail to someone. Like pick a nice art card. There are all sorts of crafts, craft places to shop, but craft fairs, whatever. And there's often really, really beautiful note cards. Buy a pack. So you're really giving a joyful moment back to that person that created it to begin with. But then when you come home, think of three people you can send it in the mail. I was thinking recently, there may be one day when there's no more mail. I mean, really.
Because it's all going electronic, isn't it? It's very sad,
Exactly.
isn't it? Well, I was thinking this, we're losing the art of writing as well. And
That's
the
true.
best the best gift anybody could buy for me, if you're listening out there, is a pen because I love writing. I journal every day. I love writing.
Okay.
And I think emotions come much stronger and with more emotions when you write it down. And people feel that rather than just typing a message. People really
Exactly. I
feel it when you write it down.
I was on a flight from Toronto to Victoria, going to visit a really good friend out there. And I was just making some notes. I had a notebook and I was, writing some notes. Anyway, the stewardess came along and she said, "Oh, I really love your handwriting." It's like, I mean, it was such an unusual thing for somebody to say, but to her, much younger, it was somewhat foreign.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway,
Yeah,
interesting.
that's they really are the younger generation are really they've got elongated thumbs where they're just doing
Right.
this all the time. Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
And lost the anyway. Let's get back to daring and caring leaders. Um, so you encourage women, as do I, to be daring and caring. And what does that look like in every day? Why do you think it's so important for women to step into these roles?
And that's the key word is step. Step in and step up. Step out. Like really, don't wait. And this is what often happens with women. They wait to be invited. Do not wait to be invited. If you've got something positive to offer, then by all means proceed. One of my new books, where is it? Here it is, right here. I don't know if you remember, after Trump was inaugurated, the next day he goes to church with his whole family. And this was the Episcopal bishop in Washington. And, he's done some things that are pretty controversial and are not friendly to a lot of people. And she wanted to take him on. Like, in other words, could you just extend a little bit more kindness? And
Right.
so her book is How We Learn to Be Brave.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it's a terrific book, Decisive Moments in Life and Faith. And in the book, she talks about different ways that bravery moments come to us. Like we can think about it and we can plan to do something, or sometimes it's just lobbed right down in front of you. And it's like, am I going to do something here or not? And, my simple solution is in your mind, generally speaking, people know the difference between right and wrong.
Hmm.
So would it be right if I stepped up and did something right now? Probably yes. And one phrase that helps you, if you're nervous or you're not quite sure, a phrase that I often use is with all due respect. Like in other words, I'm respecting the moment. I'm not presenting myself as the expert, but I do feel that I've got something to offer. And all you can hope for is that they hear you, listen to you, and consider what you're saying. And again, more often than not, people will take what you've said and build on it. They'll say, well, that makes me think of whatever. But I think sometimes people will go home and say, oh my goodness, I should have said something.
I should have said something, and it's the regrets, isn't it? So what do you regret
Right.
for? Not
So,
not taking the action or not taking the action, right?
right.
Having a
So it's
voice
the
or not having a voice.
exactly. So it's those moments of bravery and having that courage and doing it respectfully that I think is really, really important. Now, that's kind of a simple example, but again, with women, women have achieved a lot, and women really are ready for many new next levels for them.
Hmm.
Again, how are you maneuvering to get to that next level? And I think again, you can't wait to be invited.
No,
The world needs you to be in that next role.
correct.
So in that case, be selfish. Think about, how you can who can I talk to? Map out a plan because the world needs you to be in that next role.
Yeah. And I understand it's fearful, isn't it? Because you're going against the grain sometimes, and
Right.
you're like, oh, I don't want to talk. Should I talk? Should I
Exactly.
say something? And we question ourselves so
Right.
much. We
Right.
talk ourselves out of it. So it's
Exactly.
feel the fear and do it anyway, right? Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Eh,
Um, and it just takes that, what is it, 5 seconds of courage to,
Yeah, step
to
up.
say something, to have a
Step
seat
up.
and to have a seat and a voice at the table, basically,
Correct.
isn't it?
And often what I do is in those moments, because, if the person's listening to me and they're buying into what I'm saying, then it's so easy to be too preachy and then, blah, blah. What I often I connect them with someone else that will reinforce another aspect of what they're reaching for. So you're basically building out an opportunity for them to experience more. Because
Right.
sometimes they'll go away and go, oh my goodness, that's too much for me. Okay, well, why don't you talk to this person? Why don't you invite that person for coffee and talk to them about blah, blah, whatever. And it just helps them build their confidence level, gain more information, and then on to next.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that whoever made the quote, whoever said the quote, practice makes perfect, is absolutely wrong because we'll never be perfect. We're not here to be
No,
perfect. We're human beings.
right,
Practice makes improvement, and
correct.
practice gives you confidence. And the
Yes,
more that you do step up and the more that you do use your voice, the more confident you'll feel.
right.
Because 9 out of 10 times, people will listen to you.
Yes,
And
yes,
then once you've done it a few times, the 1 out of 10 that doesn't listen to you, well, you can deal with that because you've got more confidence. But practice makes improvement, not perfect.
no,
So
no, no.
have a seat and a voice at the table, please.
And keep going. And you've got
Thank
a
you.
right to be there, and you've got a right to share what you have, what you can uniquely offer. And again, with all due respect.
Right. Oh yeah.
We ha
Always polite.
I
Always
I
polite and authentic.
right,
I think
right.
authenticity, we're looking for that, know, like, and trust these days. We're looking for that authenticity. I
Yes,
really like you. I'd love to work with you, but I need to know you first.
correct.
Talk to me. Okay, well, this is me. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is my opinion about this. It's not everybody's opinion, but it's an opinion,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And
Yes.
so, with all due respect,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And just
No,
and try and be authentic without offending the world.
right. No, you do not need to be offensive at all. You don't. You don't.
No,
And if somebody is offensive, then find a way to remove yourself from the situation.
yeah.
Because again, the right thing to do is to not probably keep on going in the middle of a discussion that is only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Like
Feel,
really.
feel that. It's the energetics, I call it, right? You can just
Right.
feel that. You can feel that energy. This
It's,
this conversation is not going in the right
no, it's like,
direction. And there's no
okay,
changing it. And that's okay. So,
it is.
you're allowed to have your opinion. I'm allowed to have mine, and we'll go our
Right.
separate ways.
Exit stage left.
Exit stage.
Right. 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 Now I see your Dalai Lama quote.
Yes, and I was just about to say, the world needs more kindness. And the Dalai Lama
Yes.
here, I've had this for such a long time, and so many people comment on it. And it's basically about my brain and my heart and my temples, and my philosophy is kindness. And I just feel, with all
Mhm.
due respect, again, it's all about
Yep.
kindness, isn't it? We need more kindness in the world. Thank you for
And
noticing.
and I think a lot of, your grandmother, I think the generosity factor is the way that you extend a lot of kindness because you're focusing on something other than yourself.
Yeah,
In order to be kind, you've got to think about that other person, that other situation.
right.
And I think that's really, really important rather than, on yourself all the time. What about me, oh,
Oh,
whatever.
right.
Not good. It's like, go for it. Get up, do it, make it
Yeah,
happen.
exactly, exactly. So that some of that comes down when we were talking about confidence, we're talking about having a seat at the table. Some of that comes down to self-worth as well. So can you talk a
Yes.
little bit about how self-worth and net worth are connected? Can you explain it in a easy to understand way?
Yep. Yep. Well, from a health and wealth standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, when I did these not-for-profit health-related events, I would charge a nominal amount because part of a total wealth plan is including charitable, possibly. Not everybody wants to pay attention to charitable giving, but if they do, then that enhances your net worth because more often than not, it's a tax deduction. So, in addition to being generous and wanting to extend yourself, there's also a benefit to you from a financial standpoint, from your wealth plan. But as I mentioned earlier, if you're in a position to give, to share, then more often than not, you're the person that has reaped 2 times the amount of what you've extended. And that enhances your self-worth. You feel really good about what you just did. And so the key question is, okay, what else can I do? And not that you're walking around all the time looking to give, 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 give. It's just given the opportunity to enhance your net worth and to enhance your self-worth, why not? And I think the two major philanthropists that are front and center these days, Melinda French Gates and Mackenzie Scott, both of them ended up being divorced because their husbands chose some little twit, so how how does that make you feel? In both of those cases, those women didn't choose to leave. Their circumstances were such that they chose to leave. They chose to. But in doing so, they ended up with a significant amount of wealth that they're stewarding. And so, what are you going to do about it? Well, you could keep the wealth, you could keep it all to yourself. And, how many boats or how many, villas can you own? Really?
Really?
So I think in both of those cases, their self-worth has been enhanced immeasurably, immeasurably. And now they are role models to many more women. And I think role modeling in a family amongst generations is really, really powerful. So, I think they're incredible examples of self-worth being enhanced when things may have gone off the rails. It's like, okay, it's, those blow up dolls, you knock them over, they get back up again, and this is what they're doing.
Right.
They're motoring on. And I think they're probably having more fun than they ever thought they would have. So,
But again, isn't it? It's about, women and our and money. We think that, we were brought up money is the root of all evil. Oh, who does she think she is? She's got money.
correct,
But actually, the more money that you have, the more good you can do
correct.
when you're in service to others.
Yes. We've got a terrific philanthropist in Toronto. She is amazing. And she was diagnosed with breast cancer, went to our leading hospital for cancer, Princess Margaret, one of the four leading in the world. And so arrived for appointment with all the protocol that's about to happen. So they said, well, you'll need to come back to meet with this person and that specialist and whatever. She said, this is ridiculous. So many people come to this hospital that are from out of town that have very little proceeds and have to have overnight accommodation, blah, blah, blah. She said, once a person is diagnosed and they come here, they should have a day here to meet with all those specialists. Oh, they said, that could never happen. That would cost way, way, way too much. She said, how much would it cost? They said $25 million. She donated $25 million, and that's now the protocol. If you're diagnosed and you go there, you meet with all those people within 24 hours. So, it's just a matter of paying attention
Right.
and seeing how can I improve on. Now, granted, she had the power, but the other thing that she did during the pandemic, she knew that a lot of not-for-profits were suffering. And the ones that were probably suffering the most, that may even have been doing the most, who were ones that couldn't afford to keep on their executive director or whomever. So she went out of her way to seek out very small charities and directed some proceeds their way. So again, it's a matter of just thinking about what's going on, what can I do, how can I make a difference, who can I help now? So it's a real thought process. But in doing so, you're making a big, big, big difference, and not just to who you're extending your generosity to, but also enhancing your own self-worth by all means.
Yeah, that's incredible, and that's why, don't be afraid to,
No,
make the money. Don't be afraid to support other people.
right,
Don't be afraid to have a random act of kindness. Step up and have the confidence and the courage to have a voice and a seat at the table. And ask the people. I often find it's a silly example for me was, women's toilets, women's bathrooms.
right,
There's never enough, and that's because they were designed by men.
right,
It's like the cancer patients that you were talking about. Why don't you talk to them and see what they need
right,
instead of just looking at the bigger picture?
right.
And that's what she did. She was in it. She was in that situation. She's like, this is what we need. Let's make it happen.
Right. And you can kind of get bored with your wealth and say, oh, whatever, keep on giving to whomever we've given in the past. But no, she's a very, very active philanthropist,
Yeah.
really active. Like, in other words, I can extend wealth. Who is in most need right now? That's probably different from where I've been previously. which is terrific. You've got to think it through. But women are smart. Women are smart. So they just need to circle back and take a moment of joyful planning and think about, okay, who can I help now? Who can I help? What can I do?
So let's talk about health then. So how do you give me an example of how you can take care of your health and that benefits I mean, I understand it, but for our audience, taking care of your health, how does that benefit your financial well-being?
Well, as the saying goes, if you haven't taken care of your health and you age, you may end up using your wealth to become healthy. So that's why my whole focus was that we have parallel focus areas. We focus on our health and we focus on wealth. So the two of them work together. So you want to think about what can I do to stay healthy? And in both areas, what I recommend is that you have a trusted advisor. Now, not everybody has a personal family doctor, but you probably have a personal family health practitioner. Who is that person? And does that person have my back? If that person doesn't have your back, then who are you getting good information from about your health and well-being?
Right.
Really, really important. Same thing with your wealth. You want to make sure that you're work because there are people whose business it is to be that health practitioner to serve you well. And if whoever you're with currently is not serving you well, then time to find somebody else. So you ask your friends, who are you working with, or you do some research and look who's available in your community, whatever. But you need to be active on both accounts to look after your health and to look after your wealth. And that's why I say the trusted advisor is the key to that success.
Right. And you mentioned a word there called help. But again, as women, we don't like to ask for help. We
Never,
see it as a
never.
sign of weakness.
Correct.
But there,
Especially,
but again, there are many communities and people you can ask, right, Nancy?
right. You're absolutely right. And that more often than not happens pertaining to wealth because women don't want to let on that they don't know as much as people think they know. So they just pretend they know. When in fact, ask away, ask away. That's what that person's job is, to help you understand. I said when I had now I don't have any clients. I've just got my brand Women Worth and Wellness that I do different events for and have different sponsors who sponsor those events. But when I was a wealth advisor, you've got to take the whole person and you've got to come up with a holistic plan. And I said, I will have done my job exceptionally well when you understand why you have what you have in your whole wealth plan. You understand how it's all working in your best interest. And you will walk out into the middle of traffic and say, hit me. I've got all my affairs in order. Everything's looked, everything's looked after. And of course, things
Don't
change.
do that.
Yeah. No, no, don't do that. Don't do that. But the point was, I wanted them to understand what they had.
Right,
I wanted
right.
them to be confident that what they have will serve them well in all sorts of different scenarios that we've anticipated that they're protected against. Really, really important. Really important.
So you just talked about this at the events that you're doing. You talked before about the previous events and how you started.
Right.
What are they different now? How have they evolved, these events that inspire and inform women on their
Well,
health and wellness journey?
during COVID, it was fabulous because, of course, it was all virtual. And we could bring in speakers from all over the world. We've gone back, now it's kind of a combination of both. We've gone back to more in-person events, but it just depends. One area that I'm really thinking about possibly focusing on next, because women are stewarding so much wealth, is women's age of integrity. Meaning, I can't believe I've lived this long. I can't believe I've done this well. What would I like to do? And to your point, what would bring me joy at this moment in time? So really it's a focus, but it's also a moment in time where you can really take action. If you want to make a difference, if you don't, whatever. But when I first became a Rotarian in my 40s, and of course it was mostly men, executives, and I still remember this one man saying to me, Nancy, like, I know you're female and I know you're kind of young in comparison, but he said, you've got to realize these members are primarily in their age of integrity. And that's always stuck with me. And it's like, what the heck is an age of integrity? Well, if you look at the definition of integrity, that's really what it is. I can't believe I'm still vertical. I can't believe that I've achieved as much as I have. Maybe I'm sorry I didn't do this, that, or whatever. Well, that's the past, so forget it. It is what it is right now, and you're still vertical. You're not dead yet. So, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? That's what my dad always said. He would sign off by saying, "Now stay vertical until I see you again." And it's so true. Nobody gets out of here alive. So,
No, nobody gets out alive. That's a great one I love to use. Yeah.
yeah,
You're
what's
not
the
getting out of here
plan?
alive. Just go and eat the cake, drink the wine, go and have some joy in your life. Go and have
Right.
some memories. The only thing you get
Correct.
to take with you are the memories.
Memories are really important.
That's what you get to. You can't take the money with you. Build it so that you can give it away. You can give it to people. You can support people in whatever way
Exactly.
that is, because you can't take that with you. What you can take are those beautiful memories.
Precisely.
Right.
Precisely.
Right.
Precisely. So, that's really what kind of where I'm at right now. So I'm kind of working my way into that one.
So looking back at your journey, what's been the most joyful or rewarding part of helping
Well,
women?
getting into the wealth management business, I was recruited, and once I got into it, I should have been there 20 years earlier because it really was fabulous. It really is terrific because, you learn all kinds of things and you work with all sorts of terrific people. But at the end of the day, it's that one-on-one relationship with your families, your individuals, whomever your client is, to really, really add tremendous value to their lives. I was lined up to see a play a week ago in Toronto, and I looked over and there's this lady with sunglasses on, and I said, "Jocelyn?" And she turned her sunglasses. She said, "Nancy." Oh my goodness. So it was a client that I had from way back when. And she said, "We talk about you often." She and her partner, Judy. "We talk about what?" Oh my goodness. And she's with this other lady. I'm thinking, oh, what's gonna be said now? Anyway, she said, "No, we think about you often because you told us to invest in real estate." So we bought two income properties. And we've had so much fun doing all of that. And, it was a real compliment because often wealth advisors want all your money. Like they won't tell you to invest in other things. And she said, it was just, that was lovely to have that sort of comment coming back. And that was definitely a joyful moment. It's like, oh, wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And who knows who you're going to bump into?
Yeah, because you don't know that, do you? You don't know
No.
those acts that when you're doing your work, you're doing your thing, you're following the joy, you're doing
Yep.
something, and then and sometimes you'll hear those comments. Yeah, so
No.
I remember when Nancy, when you told me this. I remember Beth when you told me
Right.
this, and you gave me that advice, and you think it was just, well,
Doing your job.
what wouldn't everybody give you that advice? No, not
Exactly.
everybody gives that advice,
No,
right?
and I hadn't seen her for 10 years, really. It's a
That's
long time
lovely.
ago when they were clients. And so out of the blue, there she is right in front of you. And it was and you're right. It would have been a big deal for her to go out of her way to track me down with contact info now
Yeah.
and send that kind of a comment. And then in sending that comment, she'd probably think, well, does Nancy think that we've lost our mind? There's a big brain fog going on here, you know? So anyway,
That's lovely. That's really nice. That's confirmation, isn't it? That you,
it
you know,
was a,
that you
yeah,
did a good job. Did you give yourself a little hug? Did you give
I
yourself a pat
did,
on
I
the
did.
back?
My husband always goes like,
Like this?
yeah,
I always do that. I give myself a little hug. Well done.
yeah, precisely, precisely. No, life, I mean, it's difficult. It is difficult. It's challenging, but at the same time, there's a lot that we can do to be joyful and to make that life the best it possibly can be, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'd like to finish with two final questions that I ask all my
Okay.
guests, Nancy.
Yes.
If you had a chance to whisper something in your younger self's ear, what would you say?
I would say be better educated.
Hmm.
Be better formally educated, formally educated. I had a terrific education when I worked at Procter and Gamble. That was just a wonderful organization. So, and the role that I was put into as a first female manager is one that MBA students were recruited into. So even without that formal education, I still had that role. But I think having that formal education, really makes a difference.
Hmm. Very interesting answer. Very interesting answer. What's the heart of your story that you hope will resonate with our female listeners and inspire them on their own path to joy and wealth and health?
I think really to step
Mm,
it out and step
mm.
it up, be courageous and, own your own life, own your uniqueness, own all the uniqueness that you can share. And don't be embarrassed. Don't think you're not worthy because you're very worthy. And actually, on that note, worthy, I'd love to do a worthy tour. We know Taylor Swift and her Eras tour. I'd love to do a worthy tour. Like you are worthy. And if you're worthy, then what is your uniqueness? What would you like to share? What would you like to create that would create joy for you and for someone else? And I think worthy is a really, really, really powerful word.
Yes, it is. In one of my coaching programs, I do a self-worth exercise, which is always empowering. And women are like, oh gosh, what are my values? What's my worth? What do I? And it's always fascinating,
Right.
right?
It is. It is. But you're a whole human being and you've got the right to bring a lot of those things forward. So don't let the world push back on you to the extent that you don't bring your uniqueness forward.
Yeah, I love it. Unique.
Mhm.
We are unique as our fingerprint, Nancy,
Correct.
right? No
I
one is
know.
the same as you. I love that, right?
Yes,
I love that
precisely.
analogy. So a million thanks to Nancy for joining us today. Thanks to our audience for hanging out with us. We hope you found it inspiring and empowering. And to find out more about Nancy or myself, you can find all the details below. Until next time, this is Beth and Nancy signing off. Bye
Thank
bye.
you, Beth. Well done. Good job.